So now that we consider with this agency problem, how does the board of directors go about dealing with it? The stock answer is that you align the interests of the shareholders and the company managers, typically through the pay package, and then you monitor them to make sure that they're doing what the board expects. And that task falls statutorily to the board of directors. Increasingly in today's society, we're seeing a lot of activist investors that are really holding company management to the fire. So, as I said, a lot of the principal way that people align their interests, supposedly align interest of the management team with the shareholder, is through compensation. So you have to understand some of the key elements of the compensation. There's the idea of stock options. This is where a CEO has the opportunity to buy a stock at a future date at a fixed price. Idea being that if the stock price goes up, they can now go in and buy the stock at the slower price and reap all those gains. In restricted stock, this is where you actually grant them stock as a part of their compensation package. And they can't, the reason it's called restricted is it can't be sold for X number of years. So if you grant it and the stock is at this price, they're incentivized to make sure it goes up so that when they can redeem it in the future or sell it, they make more money as opposed to if it goes down. Now, bonuses are just where you look at their performance on a year in and year out basis and you give them a short term or immediate incentive. We're going to give you X extra money because of the performance. So you can see there's different time horizons associated with all of those mechanisms, and you have to pay attention to how those are mixed together. So then the first question that comes up is, okay, what do we tie the performance to? And to just show you how complicated this issue is, I think the textbook gets it exactly wrong. In one of their examples, the textbook criticizes Ford for paying Alan Mulally a bonus, then the CEO of Ford, when Ford stock was declining, and says, well, how wrong is that he gets a bonus when the shareholders are losing money? But the reality was, when that was happening, Ford was losing a whole lot less money than the other companies, and he set the stage that, as time would later validate, really turned Ford's performance around. So if I put that in BSG, what if the industry is doing horribly, or it's a year where there's really adverse exchange rates, and your company still comes out on top as a CEO? Do you not think that you would deserve a reward from the board, even if your performance wasn't all that great? So you have to know what is the benchmark you tie it to. Second is the role of CEO tenure. And in this society, in this era, it's shorter than ever. And frankly, it creates the mindset among a lot of CEOs that I better make a lot of money while I'm in the chair, because I'm only going to be in the chair. I'm only going to be able to ride this bucking bronc for 3 or 5 years. And then when I get on the back end, if I'm fired by the board, I may be unemployable. An example of that is a brilliant lady named Carly Fiorini, who was the CEO of HP through the early 2000s, and was then fired by the board. And as I'm making this video in the fall of 2015, that her tenure at HP is under a lot of examination, because she is a very serious presidential contender. But the reality is, Carly Fiorini has never been the CEO of a company again. She's never gotten that phone call because she was dismissed from a very big company in a very high-profile way. So if you get thrown off that bronc, you may never get another ride again. So there's this mindset, I have to make money while I can. Then you get to the issue of how much impact does a CEO really have? We're going to take a look at that in the strategic leadership section. But this is where you decide how much of a difference do you think the CEO really makes? And can I afford to pay for that? Incidentally, take the salary of college football coaches, do the same thing. How much do you really think a good college coach is worth? How important is football to your school? You see these very debates played out. And then you get the issue of how much more do you pay the CEO than the other C officers, the chief marketing officer, the chief technology officer, the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer. In some companies, it's a huge pay delta between the other C officers and the CEO. Clearly, the CEO is in charge, and they are much more highly compensated than everybody else. In other companies, the margin is smaller. And this is where you get into issues of, like, let's assume that you're one of the C officers down here, the chief operating officer for a company. Do you really aspire to be a CEO? Do you really want to make that step from making $500,000 a year to $5 million a year, knowing that your tenure here could be pretty limited, whereas you think you can ride things out and stay the COO for a long time. Another interesting question is this whole idea of alignment fair to the company officers? Is it fair to take the CEO and the other C officers' compensation and tie it closely to performance and make it highly contingent, which is going to tend to put all of their eggs into the company performance basket, when guess what the board of directors and the shareholders are doing? They're diversifying their risk by having ownership in other companies. So do some of these practices then give them extra exposure that is unfair? Now let me tell you what the research shows. Research shows that a lot of these ideas that are supposed to align pay with performance and align the entrance and all, when they do research, they don't see any difference in company performance between CEOs who have a lot of agency kind of incentives in their contracts and CEOs who don't. Which leads me to that bottom bullet that says maybe it's just about picking the right people who want to do the right things. That's not to say that the board can just dismiss it or that these issues are completely without merit, but it is to say it's a very complicated issue. And several years ago, I was using an article that talked about the model pay package, the model incentive package, and it was about the CEO of a company called Valeant. It's a pharmaceutical company, and how that CEO was going to be, his pay was clearly tied to performance. Well, today, in the fall of 2015, what do you find? The CEO of Valeant and the company is under investigation for somewhat cooking the books and overstating results. And was that because the Valeant CEO felt a lot of pressure to deliver for the shareholder? So I'm a personally big believer in stewardship theory. Pick a good person who you think is going to do a good job and let them do what they need to do. And lastly, I want to close with this example of how complicated this issue can be. This guy's name is Aubrey McClendon. Many of you are going to be familiar with his name because he was the guy that helped bring the thunder to Oklahoma City. Very former high-flying energy executive, founded Chesapeake Energy when he was 23, very aggressive, was one of the early players in the shale boom, made a lot of great decisions. You can see on the slide a lot of the awards he won, and then he maybe was a little reckless and started to make some bad decisions. And he also had some deals that were clearly to his benefit, but not necessarily to the corporation's benefit. He had some of the side deals. He had some interesting things going on. And basically, he was acting like he was still the majority shareholder of the company, and he wasn't. So in 2012, he is removed as the Chesapeake chairman, and in 2013, he actually leaves the company. He retires. And guess what? He starts another energy company that same year, and then earlier this year, 2015, he got sued because he's alleged to have stolen or have taken with him some of the data from Chesapeake that he later used in his energy company to support the drilling of the wells. So is he a saint? Look at all the good things he did, and he really delivered for the Chesapeake shareholders for a lot of years. Or is he a sinner that shows the abuses that a powerful CEO can render on their company and specifically on their shareholders? And of course, I'm going to say he's a little bit of both, which is why this corporate governance thing is so interesting. We'll talk more about the activities of the board in the next video.